And good afternoon. You're listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas, gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, today is August the 7th, 219th day of this year. Just 146 days remain to the year's over with, and we'll start a new one. On this date in 1782, the Purple Heart was established by General George Washington. In 1964, the Congress passed the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, one of the many wars started based on a lie. This date, 1990, Operation Desert Shield was ordered by President George H.W. Bush. And we went to another war. Well, listen, what stories we have in the news today, because there's always something going on. Well, an oversight project has sued to block Maryland Democrats' redistricting measure, backed by the governor. New lawsuit set to be filed in Maryland seeks to block a redistricting amendment backed by Democratic Governor Wes Moore from appearing on a November ballot. It argues that state officials advanced the measure after the state's own legislative analysis concluded the statutory deadline for certifying ballot questions already passed. But when you're dealing with the Democrats, what's a few rules? The complaint filed Thursday night in Anne Arundel County Circuit Court by the conservative watchdog group Oversight Project and viewed by Fox News argues that HB 2100 couldn't lawfully reach voters because Maryland's July 1st deadline for certifying statewide ballot questions expired more than a month before the lawmakers convened a special session to approve the proposal. I'm sure they'll figure out some way to get around it. They usually do. Well, the woman who would be president, AOC, is back in the news. The squad backed Tennessee 3 lawmaker wins a House primary in a newly redrawn district. That's Representative Justin Pearson, District 86, part of the trio of lawmakers in Tennessee, referred to as the Tennessee 3. Won a Democratic primary Thursday in Tennessee's newly redrawn 9th Congressional District. Pearson defeated State Senator London Lamar, District 33, community activist Marianne LaTroy, Alexandria Williams, and Attorney Jim Torino. Going to face Brent Taylor, Republican nominee who was endorsed by President Trump in November with his campaign war chest of millions of dollars he's raised throughout his campaign. He's significantly outpacing his Democratic opponents. But this day and time, doesn't make any difference how much money you've got. It's what your political affiliation is. We've seen that more than once. Well, Mandami's booed off the stage at the New York City Pro Police celebration. He walked off in shame, according to those who watched. He's being mocked after many say he was humiliated by being booed off the stage while attending one of the city's biggest pro-police celebrations on Staten Island. Attempted to address about 3,500 residents and families attending the New York Police Department's 43rd Patrol Borough National Night Out Against Crime event on Tuesday. His remarks lasted less than a minute as loud boos, jeers, and chants of "get out of here" and "nobody wants you" drowned out his voice. He had tried to continue speaking for a short time, but the jeers just drowned him out. After the boos continued, Mandami thanked the crowd with his signature hand over his heart gesture, waved, and walked off stage smiling. As he exited, the crowd continued to berate him, some yelling expletives. One organizer attempted to regain control of the event, but the crowd persisted, booing and shaking their fist at Mandami. He tried to deliver a speech at the event in Manhattan, at a police event in Manhattan, but was viciously booed and jeered off stage. Reacted conservative pundit Eric Doughty on X. It's, he may have been elected, but that doesn't mean the populace supports him. Well, Fauci's contempt of Congress is challengeable, but not his contempt for the public. An interesting excerpt from the diary of Dr. Anthony Fauci is certainly true as the U.S. Senate Committee on Homeland Security, Governmental Affairs moves forward with holding him in contempt. He wrote in his diary, "Today I'm the most famous and talked about person in this country." And certainly that is continues to be the case. The contempt vote's going to start a process that's fraught with political and legal challenges. Even putting aside the objections to the direct referral from the committee to the Justice Department rather than submitting the matter to a full Senate vote, there does remain serious questions about whether Fauci can be held in contempt after invoking his right to remain silent under the Fifth Amendment. That area is rather murky, and Fauci likely has the advantage in any litigation. At the outset, it's important to note that Fauci always faced a risk of perjury in his prior appearances. And even if immunized, a witness can always be prosecuted for false statements. And he's in a much stronger position today than he was prior to the hearings due to the sweeping pardon he got from former President Biden. And he suddenly decided to remain silent when his own words came back to contradict him. It's the jury, figuratively speaking, is still out on everything there is about Fauci. Well, Missouri neighbor is accused of killing a mother and a teen daughter after confronting the family over a dispute. The mother and teenage daughter was shot dead inside their Missouri home by a neighbor who stopped over to complain about a dispute, according to police. Robert Winkleman, 73, walked down the street to his neighbor's house in Springs, Missouri, and confronted 38-year-old Jessica Lashley about what was going on in their house on July 25th, according to Jefferson County Sheriff's Office. When Lashley responded, Winkle pulled out a gun and shot her in the head, according to officials. When the victim's 17-year-old daughter, Jersey Greer, tried to help her mother, Winkleman shot her in the head as well. Third person was chased by Winkleman as he was armed with a gun, but wasn't shot. Lashley and Greer both died days later at the hospital. When the deputies arrived at Winkleman's home and tried to confront him, he turned the gun on himself. He died at the hospital August 2nd, according to investigators, who said he'd been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of armed criminal action. Well, according to reports, investigators said Winkleman initially went to Lashley's house to complain about noise. Spokesman for the sheriff's office characterized the incident for Fox News as a dispute between neighbors. Investigators learned that Winkleman had ongoing frustration with activities at Lashley's home. Justice Greer, the teenage victim's twin sister, told KSDK she was literally just the funniest person ever. She can make anybody laugh, really supportive about anything and everything, and always tell when somebody was sad or needed uplifting. And she was always the one to do it. But unfortunately, in her last moment, she was trying to save her mother. It just shows how brave she was. And Justice said she hoped she could be half as brave as her sister was. Justice Greer said Lashley was a single mother who did everything she could to support her daughters. And now the mother and one of the daughters is dead. Well, a body cam shows a police canine jumping into action after a suspected impaired driver refuses to surrender to police. There was a 40-minute standoff in Washington. The impaired driver was finally taken into custody after the police deployed a canine that went through the driver's side window, according to released body camera footage. Vancouver Police Department released body camera and dash camera footage Thursday from a July 26th incident involving a lengthy pursuit that ended with canine Midas leaping through the driver's side window to help officers arrest the suspect. Police said they responded after getting multiple reports of a driver who appeared to be impaired. He passed out behind the wheel and was inhaling from compressed air cans while driving. Well, after officers located the vehicle and observed the driver continuing to inhale from a can, they tried to conduct a traffic stop. But the driver refused to stop. Video shows the vehicle striking a curb, accelerating, and nearly driving into a yard as it attempted to evade officers. According to police, the driver's actions posed an immediate danger to others on the road, prompting an officer to deploy a grappler device that brought the vehicle to a stop. And even after the vehicle stopped, the driver refused repeated commands to get out of the car. So finally, the canine was deployed. And the canine, in typical canine fashion, reasoned with the driver and put an end to the issue. Well, conservative firebrand went viral with anti-CCP ad survives a key primary. Senator Marsha Blackburn, Republican of Tennessee, cruised to victory in a GOP primary on Thursday evening in a race to replace outgoing Tennessee Governor Bill Lee. With the nomination in tow, Blackburn is likely to become the next governor in the volunteer state, a state that hadn't elected a Democrat to its top executive role since 2006. And Lee, who'd served in the role since 2019, is term limited and can't seek re-election. He last won re-election within a 64.9% to 32.9% victory over Democratic challenger Jason Martin, businessman and a doctor. Well, notably, Lee didn't endorse anybody in the three Republican race for the 2026 nomination, but did note he had a close relationship with Blackburn when she announced her candidacy. He said, I've been friends with Marsha for a long time. She served as my congressman and representative in the General Assembly. I'm proud we have really good people running for governor in this state. And Blackburn, for her own part, promised to continue focusing on issues that Republicans have made centerpieces in the GOP platform in Washington. She's highlighted immigration as one of those issues she's very interested in. Well, country star Hannah Dasher says a famous married celebrity once slid into her DMs. She revealed that famous married celebrity once slid into her direct messages on social media, but explained her Christian faith has kept her from taking shortcuts in the music industry. During a recent appearance on Like a Farmer podcast, the 40-year-old musician was asked about the weirdness DM that she'd ever received. She said, I don't know that I could share it because they're famous and married. She never did name the individual, so she'll come up with another one, she said. I could have gone on some pretty big tours, if I wasn't a Christian. The weirdest DM that I've got, and I guess that would be it, right? I don't know. I think that I'll have to think about that one. Well, Aces star targets heckling Fever fan and Indy before Chelsea Gray stuns Caitlin Clark in an overtime thriller. That's the most WNBA has done to keep men out of its sports. During a Thursday night wild battle between the Indiana Fever and Las Vegas Aces and at Gainbridge Fieldhouse venue, security confronted several men seated courtside who were making noise. Las Vegas's Jackie Young took time out of a tight game to confront the fans and actively demanded security handle them. The Amazon Prime Video commentators even celebrated as the men were being escorted off the floor. Young finished with 22 points, but her biggest effort was causing a floor-side scene over paying customers. Well, that's the modern WNBA. Ordinary courtside heckling can actually become a 5-alarm emergency. Now, the optics, of course, are ridiculous for a league demanding more eyeballs, but when authentic, rowdy sports fan culture shows up, suddenly everybody acts like they need a safe space. Folks are just strange, especially where the WNBA is concerned. Well, U.S. and Iran say the Strait of Hormuz deal is close. President Trump's blockade on Iranian ports remains in effect Thursday as a deal to reopen the Strait of Hormuz appears near. Iran's top Revolutionary Guard commander declared Wednesday that Tehran will continue working on nuclear weapons as long as the United States and Israel possess them. Trump said the ongoing negotiations with Tehran are the country's last chance before the U.S. escalates the conflict. And basically, the implied action is going to be bombing back into the Stone Age. Well, once affordable summer escape has been rocked by soaring costs as families shell out thousands. One influencer recently alleged that her family shelled out $10,000 every year to visit Jersey Shore spot for a week, prompting people to question whether that type of price tag is worth it. In a TikTok video, the influencer breaks down the rental cost while walking through the Sea Isle City in Cape May County with the beach chair on her back. She said, every year we pay $10,000 to come down to the Jersey Shore. The houses you rent, and you need to bring your own sheets, toilet paper, paper towels, and no food. Got to bring your coffee, everything. The influencer added, every year I'm like, this is such a racket. But here I am. No parking. You actually need to walk to the beach. Take all your stuff with you. Basically, we're paying $10,000 to camp. Although once seen as a budget vacation for New Jersey families, Jersey Shore getaways have climbed sharply in cost in recent years. Research from the Affinity Federal Credit Union in the Garden State found that the average cost of a Jersey Shore vacation this summer is 11.29% higher than last year, with week-long vacation rentals in Asbury Park, Point Pleasant, and Seaside Heights of 53% year over year. Well, I don't see the draw, personally, but that's just me. Tim McGraw and Faith Hill's daughter says weight loss drugs led to the return of her eating disorder. Gracie McGraw, the eldest daughter, Tim McGraw, and Faith Hill, is opening up about her experience with weight loss drugs. Says the Ozempic craze contributed to the return of her eating disorder. In a series of Instagram stories shared on Monday, the 29-year-old actress and singer reflected on using the medication after being diagnosed with polyendocrine metabolic ovarian syndrome, formerly known as polycystic ovary syndrome, in 2022. She said, it worked and made my PCOS symptoms easier to control. But she said the medication also brought back her eating disorder and negative body image issues. Well, no matter how you get, folks are going to be unhappy with what they consider to be negatives in their life. Danica Patrick's six-pack triggers the body shamers. Trump's Patriot Games gets an unlikely partner. And NFL are back in the news. Over the hump, safely into the second half of the week. It's quite an achievement this day and time. The long national nightmare is over. Put all the WNBA talk in the attic till next summer. The greatest sport on the planet's back after a long, dark sport winter. Doesn't mean anything. I don't know any of the players, but it's here. The Patriot Games begin this week. You can have your Hall of Fame game, NFL. This is class. I'd like to end on Donald Trump's Patriot Games. There's all kinds of sports-related things going on. This country is obsessed with it. Well, Tyrus and Jack Carr explore how special operations track targets and adapt under fire. There's always fascination with all things military-related. NASA captures a plasma whirlpool swirling across the sun. We'll see if that's going to lead to more heat. Well, a Trader Joe's party staple is in the news. South Korean police have cracked down on a popular Trader Joe's seasoning after controlled substances were detected in it. Testing by the South Korean National Forensic Science detected morphine and codeine in the poppy seed containing product. It's called Trader Joe's Everything, but the bagel seasoning. The authorities have begun blocking sales of the popular seasoning on online secondhand marketplace after testing detected narcotic substances in the product, according to the Korea Herald. The Maple Police Station in Seoul said this week that it identified listings for the seasoning blend on Carrot, a major secondhand marketplace. Worked with the company to block transactions involving the product. Police said travelers were prohibited from bringing the seasoning into South Korea. It's been considered a Trader Joe's savory seasoning blend. Contains sesame seeds and garlic and onion and sea salt flakes. One ingredient's landed party staple in trouble with South Korean authorities, and that's the poppy seeds. We'll see how Trader Joe's reacts to that. Well, Sam Asho, former NFL player and ESPN analyst, speaks out on civility and accountability in sports and media. Former NFL player and current ESPN NFL analyst Sam Asho attended the Ronald Reagan Foundation Center on Civility and Democracy's inaugural Reagan Civility and Inaugural Forum last week, advocated for improving civility among Americans, especially in sports. He said, we talked about civility in sports and how many of the same attributes athletes use can be applied to civil discourse and sportsmanship and winning and losing in the right way and playing within a set of rules, he said. If only we could apply those to politics, we might have something there. Well, the Oklahoma teen who's been accused of raping 2 girls walks free. The district attorney's called in the feds. He said, the whole thing makes my blood boil. Oklahoma teenager accused of sexually assaulting and strangling 2 high school girls saw his criminal case dismissed after he completed a youthful offender rehabilitation program without serving one single day of a prison sentence. Jesse McButler was 17 when he was charged as an adult in Payne County in March of 2025 with 10 felony counts tied to alleged attacks on 2 girls he had dated. The charge includes 2 counts of attempted first-degree rape, 3 counts of rape by instrumentation, sexual battery, forcible oral sodomy, 2 counts of domestic assault and battery by strangulation, and 1 count of domestic assault and battery. Prosecutors later added an 11th count alleging that Butler violated a protective order. But with justice being a revolving door situation, it all went away. Such is justice in America these days. The only thing worse than justice in America is justice in Georgia. They have no idea what the term means. All right. We've been talking about a lot of strange topics over the shows. We've talked about UFOs in America, and most people seem to think UFOs are limited to America. That's not true. We've talked about UFOs in South America, UFOs in Poland. Now we're going to talk about UFOs in Asia. It's been 2,000 years of stories about UFOs in Asia. First story I'm going to talk about comes from 1899. The Chi-Chi County Chronicles. They have what they call the Record of Anomalies at the Luo River. 2 spiral shell-like objects as big as hills would periodically emerge from the water. Lights would be blazing from their tops so brightly the sky would light up even during the day. They were capable of incredible speeds and could cover up to 31 miles in a flash. Whenever these objects would appear from the water, the weather would turn stormy. Now, between the years 1056 and 1063, flying object. Now, you have to remember, the Chinese are known for record keeping, going back before most countries even thought about. But between the years 1056 and 1063, the flying object, round, shiny like a pearl, came to Yazoo City and was seen by a lot of folks. It flew at night and retreated to local waters during the day. First, it was seen at the Chanchang County Marsh and later in both the Pishi and Jinkai Lakes. Now, there was an individual with a summer house that bordered Pishy Lake. One evening, the object came from the water and drifted toward him. When he got close, the outer shell opened and a horizontal ray of light shot out, pulsed from gold to silver white, so dazzling that the witness could only look at it from the corner of their eyes. There was a chamber that was inside the open shell, held a floating orb the size of a fist, and it was the source of the light that was coming out of the object, which, when fully exposed, became even more intense, so that it illuminated several miles of forest like daylight and made the sky glow as if the forest was on fire. And all of a sudden, the object sealed shut and darted across the lake at incredible speed. Ancient records describe similar flying objects. They were round, seamless, but their lights described as dimmer than what the Yazoo City witnesses described, more like the moon's than the sun's. One exception, of course, was the Light Pearl Fu, a poem by historian Kuiboyev, nearby Gaoyu, who probably saw the same thing as the witness. One last note, the Yazoo City flying object hadn't appeared in several years. Nobody knows where it went. But at night, people come to sleep on boats in the lake, hoping to have their own encounter. In fact, there's a pavilion built on the lake that's known as the Waiting for the Pearl Pavilion. That came from the Dream Pearl essays, about 1088. Now, on the night of March the 6th, in the year 905, a large star appeared in the middle of the sky, resembled a 50-liter vat. Its top glowed with a dazzling yellowish-red light, and above it glittered smaller lights, like a field of stars. It extended for about 16 meters. The smaller lights moved in sync with the main object, steadily northwest, until the entire formation halted in midair about 33 meters above the ground. In this still position, everything suddenly reversed direction, darted away in a zigzag motion toward the southeast. And abruptly, both the large object and the smaller stars vanished, leaving behind an immense patch of pale white vapor in the night sky. That came from the New Book of Tang, Astronomical Records. It came out about between 1044 and 1060. Now, on July 23rd, 1818, an enormous armored wheel, black in the middle and covered with lights on the outside surface, appeared in the southeastern sky during a storm. Flew northwest with a whirling motion and made front and back indistinguishable. More than 10 families witnessed the event. They reported the wheel made a sound like thunder as it passed. When it flew close to the ground, it pulled roof tiles, dirt, and whole trees up into the air. Caused a lot of damage to the town. That was in the Shanghai Songjiang Prefecture Chronicles, dated 1885. Well, in the late evening of June 24th, 1561, a small yellowish light white object appeared in the northwestern sky and slowly descended. The top was pointed and had a broad purple and red base. As the object got near to the ground, it swelled to 10 times its original size, shooting brilliant laser light in all directions that pulsed violently. When it reached the ground, it made no sound. That comes from the Xinhai County Chronicles, Records of Anomalies, 1879. In the year 1573, a gigantic bird-shaped thing came from the east, from the direction of Haiyan County. Large as a sailing ship and had wheel-shaped wings. When it raised its head and turned its tail during the flight, the air grew hazy and misty, and storms erupted around it. That came from a report dated 1721. In the year 1575, a giant bird came from the south of the sea, big as a ship and had wheel-like wings. It came from a record from dated 1790, the Pinghu County Chronicles. Even back in the 16 and 1700s, there were researchers who delved into ancient records. And when you're talking China, ancient can go back centuries. On May 8th, 1880, Tan, who was a peasant who lived in Jiangsu, went for a walk one morning in the woods behind his house. And there he encountered a small floating object radiating brightly multicolored light. When he reached for it, his feet suddenly left the ground. He found he was floating up so high he could hear wind whistling past. He was in a strange state the whole time, his mind thick and hazy and his body paralyzed. And he began to feel panic as abruptly his body began to fall toward the ground. Next thing he knew, he was crashing through foliage on a mountainside in a completely different province. Back on the ground, he came out of his trance, feeling as though he had just awakened from a dream. He was shocked and frightened to find himself in an unfamiliar place. After a while, a woodcutter came by and, seeing Tan was upset, asked where he was from. And he said, "I'm from Songji, Hubei province." He said, "This is Guizhou province, more than 1,000 li from your home." With the woodcutter's guidance, Tan descended the mountain, spent 18 days walking home, begging for food along the way. The nature of the strange object he encountered is still a mystery. That from the Songji County Chronicles, dated 1880. 8 o'clock on the night of September 28th, 1892, a fireball suddenly appeared in the sky south of Nanjing City. Resembling a gigantic egg, the bright red object seemed illuminated from within and cast no light on its surroundings. Clearly visible in the dusk sky, hundreds of people gathered on the Red Sparrow Bridge, gazing up and tiptoeing to get a closer look as the object drifted slowly from west to east through the clouds. Object lingered for about a meal's time before slowly fading away into the distance. Some people said it could be a meteor, but a meteor would move fast and vanish in a flash. This egg, by contrast, moved slowly. Others proposed it could have been a sky lantern released by children. That explanation also failed. While a strong wind was blowing northward that night, the object traveled steadily eastward. And a sky lantern would have gone with the wind. Among the speculating crowd was an old man who said the object made a faint sound when it first appeared. It seemed to jump an incredible distance into the sky above us from the direction of the south gate. The whole thing was quite odd. It was came from a record entitled "Red Flame in Flight" by Wu Euro, published in a pictorial dated 1892. Well, this story was written in the first person. So one day he got a letter that was written in his language. It seemed to be written in a foreign one. Thoughts it expressed were odd, confused, and almost impossible to decipher. And the letter's poor quality especially surprised him, since his friend Sheen Tishan, who was highly intelligent and highly articulate, had actually written it. The letter was disturbing too because its tone was nostalgic and sorrowful, as if it was written as a final goodbye. He said that was even though he knew that Tishan had just begun a probationary post in Shanxi. Long after that, he got word that there would be no more letters. Tishan was dead. Life was filled with strange happenings that are hard to fit into our understanding of the world. Many we let pass in order to get on with our days, but this was not something you let pass. He went and talked to Tishan's neighbors and his friends and his family members and even his enemies. Slowly he put together what had pushed his friend to his end. That summer, Tishan went hunting in the Jian Mountains to restore his spirits after a long illness. And the hunting trip proceeded unremarkably, with one notable exception. Something actually followed him out of the woods. That something took the form of two orbs in the sky, turning like windmills. Well, nobody else could see the orbs. Even Tishan didn't see them in the way one normally sees, which is to say he could see them when he looked up, even if his eyes were closed. And for several days, according to the reports, the orbs silently followed him. And then suddenly, without warning, they broke open. From inside came two young women. They floated down and delivered a message. Their mistress, an immortal, wished to see Tishan. And knowing he couldn't reject such an invitation, he agreed to meet the immortal. Instantaneously, he was transported to a room unlike any he had ever been in. Its dimensions were dizzying. Its massive jade walls eccentrically decorated with odd purple seashells. Even the strangeness of the room actually made him tremble, but its effect paled compared to the appearance of the immortal. She was beautiful, but it wasn't a peaceful kind of beauty. It's kind of beauty that disturbs because it actually exceeds normal limits. And her words exceeded limits as well. The immortal asked him to become her lover. Well, he refused, saying he felt too overwhelmed by his strange surroundings to comply, and she became angry and waved him away. Next thing he knew, he was walking up the road where the servants had first approached him. He hoped that was the end of the matter, but several weeks later, the two rotating spears came back. So did the two female servants. They didn't ask him to come with him. This time they just took him to a new place, smaller, homier, less exotic in furnishing and colors. It was much easier on his mind. So when the immortal asked him if he felt more comfortable now, he said yes. And that pleased her, as she declared he no longer had any reason to reject her, and he agreed. From then on, they met regularly during both waking and dreaming states, and she pressed him to tell nobody. He promised not to, and didn't for a long time, even when he got sick. Finding the severity of his illness convinced him to visit a doctor who specialized in matters both of the spirit and of the body. But it was too late. He couldn't keep the red pills the doctor gave him down, or anything else for that matter. Everything was vomited back up. He died during one of those vomiting fits. His last letter was written during one of the weeks of illness. Well, according to the writer, he'll never forget his friend. His qualities were simply too admirable. He wrote poetry that moved the heart and opened the mind. His calligraphy dazzled. He was witty and fun and generous, but nobody is without secrets or vices. And during his investigation, he discovered one more fact about Tishon, one that might provide a clue to how all the weird events began. In his middle age, he'd begun to mourn the passing of his youthful looks and obsess about death. And that launched his pursuit of a formula for immortality. He acquired books of occult knowledge and sought out alchemists and sorcerers who were rumored to dabble in forbidden magic. It's no surprise that when something inexplicable occurred that led to his death. However, it's a shame, while spiritual entities of many kinds do exist, they usually don't molest human beings unless a person goes out of their way to make themselves known. And it's after his investigation, it seemed to the writer that the manifestation of these entities and the tragedies that fall in their wake are prompted not by events in the external world, but mysteriously conjured by events in one's internal world, the desires of the heart and what one dares to imagine. Well, this was published in 1800, translated in the Shadow Book of Ji Yun, which was published in 2021. Well, during the morning hours of January 1st, in the year 314, the sun descended to the ground, and then these three suns appeared in the west, one after the other, and steadily traveled east. That came from the Chronicles of the Emperor Min from the year 648. In January of 814, a big star, approximately half the size of a map, was seen ascending from the ground into the night sky, its radiance illuminating the land below. A multitude of smaller stars followed. That came from the New Book of Tang, astronomical records, written between 1044 and 1060. In December 906, a star resembling Venus appeared at dusk in the east, rose slowly upward from the horizon to mid-sky, and shone like a waxing crescent moon. Then it swerved from its original path, and shortly afterwards split into two. That also came from the New Book of Tang. June 4th, 969, a star emerged from the Hagu constellation, moved slowly across the sky and slowly descended. Its light illuminated the ground. This came from the History of Song in the year 1345. On the night of August 15th, 1167, the sky was cloudy with only dim moonlight visible. A wheel-shaped object about half the width of the moon appeared in the sky. The wheel broke apart, dispersing into what seemed like hundreds of thousands of tiny stars. The jade-green auroras in the sky emitted indescribable dazzling light. Within minutes, the clouds closed in again and the sky returned to its previous darkness. That came from the year 1198. In March of the year 1356, two suns were seen swinging around each other. They came from a writing in 1801. In March of 1356, during a late afternoon, the sky suddenly became dim and yellow, just shrouded in haze and fog. And people in the marketplace were screaming, "There are two suns in the sky." And two suns were actually seen intersecting and then separating, and after separating, they merged again. That came from a writing in 1363. In autumn of 1602, a star in the shape of an egg appeared one night, its light scattering and illuminating the ground, followed by two smaller stars. Later, two other stars, one large and one small, flew loops around it. That came from the Tonglin County Chronicles of Anhui in the year 1757. Well, even though so many people believe, and I've seen this all through writings on the internet, UFOs is supposed to be a completely American issue. That's never been the case. In May of 1951, during the Korean War, Chorwon, South Korea, multiple U.S. military personnel, including PFC Francis Wall and about 25 other soldiers, were getting prepared to bombard a village near Chorwon. And PFC Wall and his regiment observed a strange luminous object resembling a jack-o'-lantern moving across the hillside. The object ascended toward a village where artillery fire was active, demonstrating extraordinary capabilities by passing directly through artillery airbursts without sustaining any damage. Suddenly, the object changed color from a glowing orange to a pulsating blue-green light. Wall, after getting permission, fired armor-piercing bullets from an M1 rifle at whatever the thing was. They made contact. People heard a metallic ding with each impact. The object began moving erratically, swaying side to side, lights flashing from it. And the soldiers then reported being swept by some form of ray emitting pulsating waves from the object. The ray was visible only when aimed directly at them. And those affected experienced a burning, tingling sensation throughout their bodies that Wall described as a penetrating feeling. The unit took shelter in underground bunkers as the craft hovered above it until it departed at a 45-degree angle. 3 days later, the entire company had to be evacuated for medical attention. All affected soldiers diagnosed with dysentery and exhibited abnormally elevated white blood cell counts. These symptoms were later noted by researcher Dr. Richard Haynes as consistent with radiation exposure. Wall himself suffered significant long-term health effects, including permanent weight loss, chronic stomach problems, episodes of disorientation, and memory loss. The case was one of at least 42 separate UFO incidents reported by military personnel throughout this 37-month Korean conflict, creating one of the most substantial collections of UFO documentation from trained observers in a combat setting. Well, from June 28, 1967, in Taipei, Taiwan, this was witnessed by Tsai Chang-hung, a brother of renowned astronomer Tsai Chang-hyson. Numerous Taipei residents, including student Lau Kong-sung and other scholars in the Taipei Yushun Observatory. Now, Tsai Chang-hung was visiting his brother, the astronomer, at the Taipei Yunshan Observatory in the evening of January 28, 1967, when a bright disc-shaped object emitting red-orange light appeared in the sky. Flew from northeast to southwest, hovered for about 10 seconds near the Big Dipper, made a sharp 180-degree turn and vanished. The whole thing lasted about 2.5 minutes. Then about 50 minutes later, the object came back. It was observed through a 5-inch naval telescope. The UFO's exterior was clearly seen, a brilliant disk with an intense orange-red glow emanating from its entire outer shell. It surpassed Venus in its brightness. The Tsai Chang-hung mounted his camera to the telescope's platform and captured 3 photographs. One image showed the UFO in its entirety. It's considered the first authentic UFO photograph in Taiwan's history. That same night, numerous witnesses across Taipei contacted the Yunshan Observatory reporting similar sightings. They described a cigar-shaped luminous object that repeatedly appeared and disappeared in the night sky. Among the witnesses was Lao Kung Sung, a student from Taipei Municipal Jianguo High School, had a close encounter near the Taipei District Court. He described a disc-shaped object so large it nearly spanned the width of the street, reportedly being terrified as the object silently passed over his head. Well, not only was the sightings made during the Korean War, but also during the Vietnam War. In fact, a lot of very strange things happened in Vietnam, and we've got a book coming out about that. This story comes from January 6, 1969 at 1:52 in the morning. Chu Lai, Vietnam. Primary witnesses were multiple U.S. military personnel, including observation tower guards. As according to the Daily Journal of the 23rd Infantry Division's Chu Lai Defense Command, at 1:52 in the morning, Tower 72 personnel reported an unusual egg-shaped object, roughly 15 to 20 feet of claws, flying into their area about 700 meters in front of their position, an azimuth of 310 degrees. Object glowed when it moved and approached slowly over the ammunition supply point before landing in the defense perimeter. Control tower radar detected nothing, and witnesses noted the object made no sound as it moved. Sighting is particularly credible since it was recorded in official military documentation by personnel whose mission was coordinating ground defense in the Chu Lai Defense Sector, located on the Vietnamese coast about 40 miles southeast of Da Nang. Base's defense system included numbered observation towers ringing the perimeter, which routinely reported anything unusual or potentially threatening to the base. Well, in 1972, in the Fukushima Prefecture in Japan, 4 climbers, while hiking up Minowayama Mountain west of Shiganmori, 25-year-old Kamoshito and 3 friends observed a helmeted-shaped object hovering motionlessly in the sky for about 10 to 15 minutes as if suspended in place. The object was a distinctive oxidized silver color comparable to a 1 yen coin, is estimated to be about 30 centimeters long. The 4 witnesses were stunned into silence for about half a minute by the sight. The object completely vanished when the hikers attempted to reach the summit for a better view. That case represents just one of many sightings reported within a 30 to 40 kilometer radius around the Shiganmori Mountain, an area known for unusual magnetic properties. Well, August 9, 1974, here in Indonesian island, Third Officer Shi Chan Sai and 2 crew members on board the Taiwanese fishing vessel Seal Number 1 were the witnesses. It was 11:29 p.m. The crew of the Taiwanese fishing vessel Seal Number 1 was sailing near the western coast of an Indonesian island close to the equator when a bright red object appeared in the night sky. It was elliptical, glowing softly with slightly reduced luminosity toward its center. Its size, more than 10 times the diameter of the moon, shocked the witnesses. The object traveled at high speed from west to east at low altitude, vanishing over the horizon after approximately 1 minute. On reaching Jakarta, the crew sent a report to Shan Changheisen, director of the Yushan Observatory, classified it as a UFO. On October 23rd, 1978, at 8:40 in the evening, in Gansu province in China, Air Force pilots and ground support personnel at an airfield near the Gobi Desert had a sighting. They watched an outdoor movie. They were watching an outdoor movie when a massive object suddenly appeared above them at an altitude of 6,000 to 8,000 meters. Spanning over 1,000 meters in length, it had 2 brilliant lights, one at the front and one at the tail. Moved east to west, covered half the sky. The sighting lasted for several minutes. October 28, 1979, Taipei, Taiwan. Over 10 citizens from Yangmingshan, Nanshizhou, Nangang, Shanghai, Songshan, and the Yushan Grand Hotel areas of Taipei were witnesses to this. They reported seeing a luminous object in Taipei. One individual described it as an oval larger than the moon, radiating bright sunset-colored light. A medical student and his classmates observed the object split into 3 parts before disappearing within half an hour. A graduate student from the Central Police University described a disc-shaped object with several windows encircling its perimeter. A customer at a restaurant and some colleagues observed a similarly described object, noting red lights shining from the small windows. According to the Yunshan Observatory's assessment, the object was below the cloud layer at an altitude of less than 1,500 meters, located about 6 to 7 kilometers west of Yongshan, above Jinghuang District. Then July 24th, 1981, at about 10:30 in the evening, over 1 million people, including astronomers and meteorologists, military personnel, and civilians across Tibet, Sichuan, Qinghai, Gansu, Zhenxi, Ningxia, Henan, Hubei, Anhui, and Jiangsu were witnesses to this. They watched as a brilliant object glided across the night sky, slowly spinning and ejecting radiant material from its center so that the whole formation had the appearance of a massive unfolding spiral. Witnesses described 5 or 6 distinct yellowish-white spiral rings, each edged with delicate halos of pale green and bright blue, stretching high above the horizon. Such estimates that the pattern spanned nearly 100 kilometers across. The entire structure gave the impression of a massive glowing vortex spinning in place high above the earth and visible over a 2,000-kilometer range across western China. It stayed that way for over 2 hours. The event was documented by astronomical observatories across the region and reported by Xinhua News. It remains one of the most extraordinarily witnessed and well-documented UFO sightings in Chinese history. Over 1 million people, couldn't be wrong. Then in Taichung City in Taiwan, April 4th, 1984, President of the National Chongqing University Astronomy Society and 3 classmates were conducting astronomical observations when they spotted a moon-sized green glowing object. It was moving slowly westward at first and suddenly shot southward at more than twice the original speed. It zigzagged and resumed its westward course. No idea what it was. November 17th, 1986, at 5:11 in the afternoon in Alaska. Primary witnesses were Captain Kinju Torachi, co-pilot Takanori Tamafuji, flight engineer Yoshio Tsukuba. Japanese crew with Japanese Airlines Boeing 747 cargo freighter encountered 3 unidentified objects while flying over Alaska. The captain, a veteran pilot with over 10,000 flight hours, along with his co-pilot and flight engineer, noticed 2 objects at 5:11 p.m. while flying at 35,000 feet. And through the cockpit window, he could see rectangular arrays of rapidly blinking orange and green, white, and amber lights, like strands of bulbs arranged in geometric patterns. He initially assumed they were some kind of military aircraft because of their size. The craft positioned themselves about 2,000 feet to the far left and slightly below the 747, and maintained this formation as the jet continued on its course. At about 5:19 in the evening, the 2 craft abruptly slid across the sky and braked into a position directly in front of the cockpit, only 500 to 1,000 feet ahead, stacked one above the other. In making this maneuver, they displayed what the captain described as a complete disregard for inertia and gravity, and appeared to fire some kind of reverse thrust, flaring into dazzling brilliance for several seconds. Light was so intense, the captain could feel the warmth on his face through the cockpit window. Craft accompanied that 747 for several minutes, matching every course adjustment. Air traffic control was notified at this point, but they couldn't detect any traffic in the indicated position. At about 5:23 p.m., the 2 small craft suddenly broke away and dropped toward the eastern horizon, disappeared within seconds. In their place, a pale band of light appeared on the left front side of the jet, reached into the outline of a gigantic walnut-shaped craft. The captain estimated it to be roughly 2 times bigger than an aircraft carrier, about 1,000 feet long. The massive object paced the 747 despite the jet's attempts to outmaneuver it through several turns and attempts to descend. It occasionally disappeared from view, only to reappear moments later in a different position. Unlike the first 2 craft, several Anchorage air traffic controllers confirmed the radar signature of this object, though it appeared and disappeared from their screens multiple times. When Anchorage Center offered to scramble military aircraft, the captain declined, fearing for everybody's safety. Meanwhile, military radar at Elmendorf Regional Operations Control Center also tracked the object. Finally, as JAL 1628 approached Fairbanks, the mysterious craft suddenly disappeared. Federal Aviation Administration conducted an intensive investigation, interviewing all the crew members and reviewing radar data. FAA Division Chief John Callahan later testified that during a subsequent meeting attended by representatives of the FBI and the CIA and President Reagan's scientific study team, all present were told the incident never happened. They were instructed to surrender all documentation, though he secretly retained copies. Despite attempts at suppression, the case generated international attention after the FAA's early confirmation of reporters helped propel it into the media, making it one of the most thoroughly documented aviation UAP encounters in history. But I'm not surprised the government tried to suppress it. They do that today. I had an incident in South America that I was told if I wanted to remain an officer, I didn't see anything. August 27th, 1987 at 7:35 p.m. in Shanghai in eastern China. Air Force pilot Mao Xiangying, Shanghai Meteorological Bureau officials, Shanghai Gunghao Middle School teacher, Air Force flight controller, 3 aerospace engineers at Wuxi's 738 Sanatorium, military personnel and residents on the Jiangxi Island were all witnesses to it. In fact, there were multiple witnesses across eastern China reported an extraordinary unidentified flying object that exhibited spiral rotation and electromagnetic effects. Chen Fing at Shanghai's Zhuhai Meteorological Station first observed it described as a circular object in the southwestern sky that continually rotated in a spiral pattern with an orange-red tail behind it, and it grew from a bright point to a plate size before disappearing. The teacher from the middle school described the phenomena as orange-yellow in color and with an intensely bright core surrounded by a spiral made up of 3 concentric rings of light. The entire structure rotated clockwise, completing one full rotation about every 2 seconds. Air Force pilot encountered the same phenomenon while returning from patrol and pursued the object for 2 minutes and 45 seconds over Jianding County. He described it as resembling a straw hat shape, trailing a very long tail behind it, somewhat similar to a rocket launch. He measured it moving at several times his aircraft speed. Simultaneous sightings also reported by flight controller Ping Zhaojun and Hangzhou. Their aerospace engineers observed a plate-sized object with an estimated 300 to 400 centimeters diameter flying in spiral trajectories. The incident produced widespread electromagnetic effects. When the object passed over Xinjiang Island in Zhejiang province, the power plant suddenly lost electricity despite normal operations. Watches stopped functioning. The island was plunged into darkness while the object itself illuminated the area so it was as bright as daylight. The event received extensive coverage in major Chinese media, including reports on People's Daily and the Zhejiang Daily, making it one of the most well-documented UFO cases in Chinese history. Well, on that note, we've come to the end of today's show. We'll be talking about more Oriental UFOs on Monday, because this is Friday. So until Monday at this time, this is Ken Hudnall for the Ken Hudnall Show saying have a truly great weekend.